Welcome to the David Lammy Clown Show. Well, that's obviously fake, but Mr. Lammy cemented his reputation as a weapons-grade village idiot yesterday with his performance in Parliament.
That's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister. We know that. We've deported more in the last year than they deported in the last 5 years. Please, I'm not going to take any lecture from the Honourable Gentleman. 13,000 more bobbies we are putting on the streets, kicking out 5,000 foreign criminal offenders. I've got to say to the Honourable Gentleman, he should do better.
Well, it emerged shortly after that 2 more criminals were released by mistake, prompting people online to do stuff like this. 'Cause to lose all offenders, that is just so typically me. Oh, baby, baby, oops, I free them again. Played dumb in the house, then shouted with pain. Oh, Lammy, Lammy, oops, I said get a grip. Oops, I freed them again. The Algerian sex criminal mistakenly released is still on the run, but there is some good news for the Deputy Prime Minister. Well, the fraudster who was also released by mistake from HMP Wandsworth just handed himself back in today. That was good of him. David Lammy likes to bang on about race and ethnicity. After yesterday's clown show, he put this post out on social media. He said he was very proud to be the first black person to answer at Prime Minister's questions. Well, firstly, he didn't actually answer anything, did he? And secondly, quite a few black people are now actually very angry with him for drawing attention to his race. This is my favourite quote online. So one man said, "I'd have preferred it if the first black respondent at PMQs hadn't forgotten his poppy, then worn it on the wrong side, behaved like a thug, ignored questions and freed more convicts than Amnesty International. Lammy is a dismal orgy of embarrassment." Grief. Kemi Badenoch also weighed in. "Don't drag black people into the mess you made of yourself this afternoon. Proud moments come from performance, not pigmentation." That's all he's got, really, isn't it? Banging everything on about race all the time. Remarkably, though, David Lammy has done 2 things today to make yesterday's shambles even worse. Firstly, the issue of the poppy. Mr. Lammy said he wasn't wearing one because he'd been out to buy a new suit that morning. Now, just so we're clear, here he is saying, listen closely.
Bought a new suit this morning because my godmother said she would be watching.
Crystal clear. Crystal clear. Well, now it turns out that wasn't true. David Lammy's team are now saying that he meant that he'd bought a new suit for PMQs and that he was actually just working very hard on the morning. He was working very hard. Well, that's not what you said, Mr. Lammy, is it? And it looks to me like the Justice Minister found out an Algerian sex offender was on the loose on Tuesday evening and decided to spend Wednesday morning on Savile Row. Secondly, he did this interview where he tried to claim that the Algerian sex criminal was mistakenly released before he brought in new, stricter measures.
We have found out that the release that has caused concern this week was actually before I introduced those checks just a few weeks ago following the release of Kabatu. And the other prisoner was a court mistake, not in fact a prison mistake.
Right, well, again, like night follows day, it turns out that's not accurate either. The additional checks that Mr. Lammy mentioned were actually introduced on Monday, October the 27th. The Algerian man was released on Wednesday, October the 29th. I mean, he can't even get his excuses right. Look, call me old-fashioned, but I think the person in charge of our justice system should at least be able to get their own story straight. Worried about your privacy online? Especially with the new digital ID debates and Online Safety Act in the news? Your mum was right. Some things really don't need sharing, especially with your internet provider, advertisers, or even the owner of that random pub Wi-Fi. All of them can see a lot more than you think. Unless, of course, you're using ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is designed to help you reclaim control. It encrypts your online activity, making it much harder for Wi-Fi owners or third parties, whether that's your boss, landlord, or just someone at the airport to watch what you are doing online. ExpressVPN has been independently audited 3 times, most recently by KPMG in 2025, who confirmed that ExpressVPN does not keep activity or connection logs. ExpressVPN's encryption is extremely tough, and cracking it would take enormous computing power and many years. With new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely with ExpressVPN keys, plus enjoy greater identity protection features at higher tiers. Live chat support is available 24/7 and typically connects you with a real person in under a minute. If you're ready to try ExpressVPN right now, you can get a plan starting from just $3.49 a month if you purchase a 2-year subscription, which gives you up to 4 extra months for free. Click the link in the description to lock down your privacy and give hackers, trackers, and nosy parkers the boot. Protect your privacy now with ExpressVPN today. Get the thoughts of my panel. Senior reporter at Guido Fawkes, got Ellie Wheatley, former Tory MP Alex Stafford, and the ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Ellie, this is... well, he's managed to make it worse. So, basically, it turns out that when he said clear as day there that he'd been out that morning getting a suit, which I didn't have a poppy on, turns out that wasn't true.
Absolutely, and by the way, he put it on the wrong lapel when he did get given by a backbencher a poppy. But
I think Bridget Phillipson pinned it on them. Yeah. And it's not true, because I looked up on the Royal British Legion website and there isn't a right or wrong side.
Right, well, we all put it on.
But there's a reason why I have a buttonhole, though, so there clearly is.
But his story doesn't add up, because he said yesterday in a statement that my officials have been working all Tuesday night on this. Then today he said, I didn't find out about it until Wednesday morning, so yesterday morning. So that also doesn't add up. The whole thing, Calamity Lammy has just embarrassed himself in this situation. But the truth is, our prison situation is in crisis. We did, Labour did inherit a flawed system from the Tories. They actually were the ones to bring in people only serving 43% of their sentence before leaving. But Labour is just making this situation so much worse. They are now going to scrap short sentences. They are also going to let out prisoners after serving just 33% of their sentence, and that's including sex offenders. So, I mean, this is not criminal justice here. It's criminal chaos, and Lammy is leading this.
So his story didn't add up, and then again, when it turns out he was trying to use that excuse of, well, actually, I brought in these new rules and regs. And this guy was released before they came into force. Well, he wasn't. I mean, again, it's just not true.
Well, he's just not over his brief, fundamentally. He just doesn't know what's going on. He has no idea what the police are doing. He has no idea what the prisons are doing. I don't know what he is doing, frankly. The only thing he seems to be doing is actually making Keir Starmer look like a political genius. And actually did a great job. I mean, we were here last week talking about Rachel Reeves and the messes she was made. We're not talking about Rachel Reeves making mistakes now, so we've moved the heat away from that. We're talking about David Lammy making mistakes. But I think there's a worrying trend across the whole of the front bench of the Labour Party, is that every single one of them just clearly isn't up to their brief. And like basic things, they don't seem to know what's going on. And if they found out, and he clearly did find out about this, a sex offender, he's not just a sort of minor criminal. He's a convicted sex offender, is loose. Why weren't the details released to the public? Why are we not having like a nationwide or at least a London-wide manhunt to try and get a sex offender off our streets? And if I was that permission, I found out on a Tuesday evening that there was a convicted sex pest wandering the streets. Surely you put the picture out, get the public involved, try and bring him back to jail, rather than just pretending it didn't happen. I mean, this is a sex offender.
And also, he had a statement ready to go in the chamber, by the way, which he then said, I didn't use it because I didn't want to impose on the Met's investigation. The Met then came out and said, we gave him the green light.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think all the Met want to do is actually get the person back into jail.
I'll just come to it. Luckily for the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary, the convicted fraudster handed himself back in today.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, the situation with prisoners being let out early is a shambles. I mean, the reason that Labour's had to introduce shorter percentage of sentences being served is because there ain't no prison places. And we all know who had 14 and a half years to build them, didn't do it, and yet now claims... Well, we mustn't forget about that Prime Minister's questions as well. Alex, let me finish. Is that the Tory got whatever he's called, I didn't know who he was, I forgot. James Cartledge, not a household name in his own household, is stood up and had his question ready, but he used all his other questions because they can't count to 6. I don't think Parliament was in a particularly good day, and then he had to make a point of order to ask the question, which was pretty embarrassing for the Tories.
OK, I mean, it's a nice spin, isn't it? I mean, there was definitely one man who was humiliated in Parliament yesterday, and I'm not really sure it was James Carlish. But
we literally didn't ask the question, Patrick. I mean, he could have skewered Lammy, and he didn't.
I think he did.
No, he asked the question in a point of order at the end.
Everyone was waiting for the bombshell, which was a hug.
And he got up to do it, and then they forgot that he hadn't counted to 6. This shows how bad the Tory opposition is.
I see.
Well, he says bad. We're talking about it today, a day later, and it's still going on. I think it's actually good opposition.
Can I also just ask what it actually says about David Lammy as a person? So I think you have to be a special kind of stupid to have somebody hand you a speech, a statement, specifically about Remembrance Sunday and about how important it is, and to be holding that in your hand, and then to walk in a room with 650 people who are all wearing poppies, and to not think, have I got a poppy on? He didn't think... I mean, I'm sorry, but I think anyone who's actually remotely patriotic would have remembered to wear a poppy.
Totally. But also, what about his team? Why didn't they say, hang on a minute, mate, you've got to put a poppy on? And the fact that he had to borrow a poppy off a veteran, he was wearing a veteran's poppy. He's not a veteran. That's also insulting in itself.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't understand what his team were doing and actually advising him. And clearly he just can't think on his feet. He's sort of panicked not having a poppy. And even when James Carlish started asking the question about this, surely he would have realised, OK, Tories know about this convicted sex offender. I need to make my statement now and actually get in the front foot. And he just sort of, panicked. He panicked about his poppy. He panicked about the sex offender. He's just clearly not very good. All he could do was get really aggressive.
Well, got very aggressive, and then posted about how it was a real honour to be the first black person to answer questions at the Dispatch. And actually, that's all David Lammy's got, isn't it? The kind of... The diversity angle on things. That's what he's made a career out of. That's what he's made a name for himself out of. He doesn't have anything else, does he, Matthew?
Well, I think he's a very talented politician. That's why he's the Deputy Prime Minister. He's clearly not had a very good few days. Look, on Poppygate,
When did he buy his suit? Go on, your...
I have literally no idea when he bought his suit.
Because he's still... I mean...
But can I just say on Poppygate? Yeah. Look, I mean, obviously, somebody's going to go onto Prime Minister's questions and make a reference to Remembrance Sunday, should have been wearing a poppy. They do fall off. I mean, whether it actually fell off or not, I mean, as far as we know, it didn't. But of course, his team should have checked it. And then, of course, it's one of those things when the person who kindly handed him one was a veteran and hadn't clocked that he shouldn't be handing a veteran's poppy to a non-veteran. Absolutely. Yeah, but I don't think that. But on the other hand, I think we can get a little bit over that. I don't think we can say that he's dishonouring Britain's veterans because he wasn't wearing one. I don't think
there is a case to be had, and a lot of people make this point about how easy it seems that some Labour politicians find it to lie. And when you are confronted in that situation, his first response, quick as a flash, was to say, well, I went out and bought a new suit this morning because my godmother's watching, and that's why. And then today it turns out that wasn't true.
Because he didn't want to admit the fact that if he'd known about this sex offender being let out on the loose accidentally, that he'd gone shopping.
It also looked a lot like a tailored suit, which I will say, you don't tend to get off the rack.
And also, you don't tend to get done in an hour either. So, yeah. I mean, look, it's a mess. We need to know exactly what happened. And if he's misled the House, then he'll be held accountable for it.
OK, well there we are. Anyway, some stuff on David Lammy. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the Algerian convicted sex offender follows the fraudsters and hands himself into the authorities. But a spokesperson for the Ministry of Justice said the crisis in the prison system this government inherited is such that basic information about individual cases can take unacceptably long to reach ministers. On entering the House, facts were still emerging about the case, and the DPM, that's Deputy Prime Minister, had not been accurately informed of key details, including the offender's immigration status. No media story about the individual case was yet in the public domain, and remained subject to a live police investigation. The DPM was asked questions about the release of an asylum seeker, as was confirmed after PMQs by the Home Office. The individual was not an asylum seeker. The Deputy Prime Minister waited until after PMQs and further facts had emerged before making a statement. Well, look, that clears that up. We can all move on.
Absolutely.
Oh, what a joke. OK,
a lot of